Right. Hello, everyone. Right, I'm going to start now. Welcome to the last of these summer live streams. This one's a little bit more like the first one. It's just going to be me talking to you, answering questions, mainly because my brain just doesn't do that well with doing stuff on screen and talking at the same time, especially for this topic. I was going to create a presentation, wear a business suit, that kind of thing. But I thought, "Do you know what, that's a bit intense." So I'm just going to talk because it's going to be easier for you to probably just digest it, ask questions. I can look at the chat at the same time and respond to the questions. And it's about so the title of this, the clickbaity sort of a thumbnail I gave you all, was basically getting your dream job in animation, which is, it's fine. That's a great aim. A lot of people, that's, somewhere. There's not many people who sit in a place and go, "Do you know what? I'm super happy and I'm never going to change now." Most people kind of get into a job, and even if it's their dream job, they might then develop something else that's a dream. There's a really good, a little bit of research about. I think it was different sort of class levels, and it was saying about how people like in the West aspire for a fancier, faster, more expensive car, and then in a country where bikes are the predominant way of getting around, they aspire to have a car. And then there's certain places where there'll be like little villages and stuff, where they aspire to have a bicycle. So it's that sort of like continual thing, and it's the same with any job or career. You're going to always aspire for the next thing. So it's this idea of getting your dream job, doing your dream project, is kind of about understanding what it is that makes you happy in your sort of core self, and then working from that outwards. Because you might think, "I want a job in animation and that'll make me happy," but it's very rare that people hit a goal and then they are just happy with that on its own. So this is hopefully going to teach you a little bit, I hope, about through my own trials and tribulations with aiming for things, achieving them, or maybe not. But normally, when I achieve something and then going, I'm happy with it for like a year, and then I want to change again. So it's learning to try and find that. It's that popular term ikigai, which is the thing about the crossover of the three circles and finding something like that you're passionate about and other stuff like that. So yeah, if you haven't heard of that term, search for ikigai. I'm not going to try and spell it because I can't remember, but it's got an I, a K, a G, and an A and an I in it somewhere. But it's really popular. It's a little bit technical. If your brain works that way, visually, diagrammatically, then there we go. Thank you, Danny. Um, Ikigai. If your brain works that way and digests that way, that's cool. But it's basically about finding something that sustains you as a passion. So back to the stream content, the main thing. So what we're talking about, a dream job. So this is a common thing that I get asked. It's probably the most popular question, um, people ask me about. I want to go from here to here. I'm currently interested in animation and I want to be working in animation. Or another one, not so common, but still happens quite a lot. I work in animation, but I don't like it anymore. I want to work in this instead. I want to work in story. I'm an animator. I want to be a storyboard artist. Or I'm an animator. I want to write books. Or I'm a rig artist and I want to do this. A lot of people ask about transitions. Uh, Weirdly, I didn't realize I was doing this at the time, but I transitioned from being an animator as my day job to doing this, because this interested me, making, teaching, education, making an animation school thing online, and that's been great. And now I'm kind of personally sort of developing a little bit more, and I've been doing this 5 years, so now I'm looking at the next thing. So it doesn't stop. So just remember that you're not going to just crack it and that'll be it for the rest of your life. We're not our grandparents. You're probably not going to have a job for life. So the sooner you accept that, the more comfortable you'll be. um, but we're talking about getting to that dream sort of thing, chasing an aim, and that can be very difficult. It can be really intense. It can be overwhelming most of the time. The dangerous side of it is that it can make you feel inadequate. It can make you depressed. It can make you not enjoy the moment. It can make you not appreciate where you've come to or the stuff you've done, and that's not good. I've been there as well. I have plenty of that experience. So it's learning to be happy with it and enjoy the journey and not the destination, because it's like, same for life. If you're always trying to get somewhere, you'll never enjoy it when you get there because you'll be like, "Where's the next thing?" So it's the same with animation. The reason why it's so pertinent with animation is because it takes so flipping long to do. Now, even if you're like a character designer and you think, well, I can whip out a character design in a couple of hours, um, it really does take ages. The whole production, it's lengthy. So you need to be able to just enjoy the process. So getting from A to B, that's what we're talking about. Getting from here to the dream, the thing you're aiming for. Hi, Kevin, by the way. And so, yeah, how do we do that? So, first of all, to understand how we do that, because that's probably why you're here, maybe interested. I've never met a single person who's like, I aim for stuff and I achieve it. Like that's a robot, you know what I mean? Like nobody, we're humans, we're flawed. We're like the cheats and the path of least resistance and all that kind of thing. So that's why is it so difficult? And that's what we really need to understand is that we're afraid of failing, we're afraid of judgment, we're afraid of kind of like it getting there and it not being as good as we thought it's going to be. It's like they say there's a saying that's people say about never meet your heroes because they kind of disappoint you. Bit of a pessimist view to be honest, but it's a it's a similar kind of thing. If you get there, you're like, maybe what's next? But that's what I'm talking about is that you need to understand how to enjoy the journey because then the goal is not such a big deal. It's like you're doing this process, you're enjoying the process of kind of like not being perfect and so on. To really embrace that, we need to understand what else goes into it. So we've talked about the idea of uh, failing. Failure is part of progress. Might be a kind of weird American accent there. Failure is part of progress, and you need to understand that you know line of progress is never linear. Um, we often only see the tip of the iceberg when we look at films and things. We often only ever see the promotional material, and the promotional material, even if the director goes, "Now this film was really difficult to make," the crew, somebody broke their leg and somebody was off in COVID and all this that we see them smiling as they say it and it's edited and it's made to look nice and it's got uplifting music because it's generally meant to put a nice spin on the thing we're about to consume, make us go watch it or whatever. So you got to understand that is very important to the marketing of it, and it's not really the true story. You speak to anybody who works in animation. I do kind of like working in the studio when new people come in because they're so keen and they're so excited. And they're like, yeah, this is where the magic happens. And then you just sit down at a desk in an office, like any other office, and just start using software. And you're like, yeah, but it's colorful, cool characters. And you're like, yeah, but you got to move them bit by bit by bit. Maybe in 2 weeks, you'll get some notes. And then you gradually start to see why a lot of animators uh, take the shine off it because it becomes a job. So I'm not saying it's not a fun thing to do, but you have to be able to enjoy that process. So fear of failure, resistance, the inner critic, all those kind of things, and fear of judgment from other people. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I'm not going to go into this really because it's a psychologist's job. But a lot of people have like a thing to prove their parents, their elders. From when you're a child, generally have like your pre-adolescent, your adolescent periods, and where you can develop little things where you're like they become slightly inhibiting, maybe things that you have as insecurities, and then you try and prove your parents, your elders wrong. You try and show them, look what I've done. Like it's a common thing, um, and show off. Look, I've made it. That's why so many people. I've not got anything against Disney. Disney loyal watches this, I'll have no house left. But it's that's why so many people say I want to work for Disney because they grew up with it, because the marketing's there, because the budget's there, and because Disney is the thing that gets notoriety amongst society. Everybody knows who Disney is. Nobody goes, I want to go and work for some obscure studio in the Czech Republic. Like that's not your mum's not going to be able to tell her friends about that and then go, it sounds like Adam's doing all right versus like Adam's having a breakdown and he's gone to the Czech Republic to work with little wooden models for 3 years in a darkened room. That kind of thing, it doesn't have the same sing to it. So you have to bust through that to get to what you really want. Um, and this is all I'm talking at the moment quite freely, but around the idea of finding what your real dream is. We're going to talk about that in a second when we get onto note taking. But it's important to find out what you really want, because otherwise, if you just do it like knee jerk reaction, just run for the first thing that you think you want, but you don't really want it, you might sabotage because of the fact that deep down you know you don't really want it. It's like being in a relationship where you know deep down it's not right, but you kind of carry on. If anybody's been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's a very similar thing, but it's you're pushing this, you're steering this ship that's really difficult to steer, and it's gradually turning like a, and you're pushing it down a path. And if that's not the right path, it's going to be difficult to jump, and you're not going to be in it. Your heart's got to be in it. So you do have to love it to really put the effort in. And so, how do we find out what we really want to do? Well, the ikigai thing, Ikigai. Wow, that was bad. Ikigai. That's a good like model to look at with the little circles overlapping to kind of have a. If you've got no idea what you want to do, you're in a bit of crisis mode, then you can do that. If you've got a rough idea, you can check with this sort of thing. But you have to do this in alpha mode, version 1.0 mode, uh, yeah, sorry, version 2.0 beta mode, like basically the advanced human mode. So we want to think about yourself avoiding, when I say knee jerk reaction, like the chimp kind of brain, the fight or flight, the survival instinct mode. That's the thing that makes you go and eat the donut you don't want to eat. That's the thing that makes you sabotage things. That's the thing that makes you go on your phone when you shouldn't be doing that because it's not your bigger goal. Everybody has it. Nobody's immune. I'm terrible at it. Everybody else is. Uh, so it's just learning how that's part of us. Like we've grown up post-war, so it's like, and I'm talking about the Second World War. Like it's a long period of time where post-industrial revolution, we've gradually been everybody's been feeling like life's been getting quicker. It's not just the internet's fault. It's not just social media's fault, but it's just made it worse. And so we need to kind of embrace that and learn that we are going to try and take the path of least resistance. And we do need to make these decisions, make these plans when we're in a calmed state, in this, like, do you know what? I've got ambitions. So it's, when you go to like an animation festival or you see something that really inspires you, go to a gallery, come out of there and you're buzzing, you've traveled as well. That's often a common one where people get really, fired up and they're like, I've got aims, I've got goals, I'm going to do something with myself. Um, there's a reason why that happens when it does. I just said art gallery. Uh, you've been to something like a festival. You've traveled. All those things require you generally to change your state, change the thing that you are used to. It refreshes you. It kind of puts you more alert visually and everything else. Like all your five senses. That everything's kind of firing because you are taking in lots of new information, and it kind of awakens the senses a little bit. And there's also generally, even though I know people go on their phones all the time, you'll still find that you are pulled away from your phone more than you are in your current environment. I can walk around my flat with my eyes closed and know where everything is. I don't need to look. So that's if I'm on my phone, of course I know how to grab something. I actually did it this morning. I was in getting some groceries and I was kind of checking my shopping list. And I put my hand on my trolley and started pushing it. I realized I'd just taken somebody else's trolley. It was like next to the handle. So I didn't even realize I wasn't looking at the trolley, but obviously didn't look at the contents, and somebody chased me down the aisle and thought I was stealing their stuff. So that kind of thing, we need to make sure we're in the sort of more awake centered sort of senses where we're really present. Yeah, we're not just. It's not something to do on a really really busy day when you've got loads of stuff flying and everything else. If you can't travel or make these notes at this point or go to a festival, it doesn't matter. What we need to do is find a little bit of time to take yourself away. So a sensory shutdown of everything else, all the notifications and the beeping and things. We need to close all that out. What's the best way to do this? To go on a walk in nature if you can. I mean, a walk around the city is fine, but nature's best. And leave your phone at home and don't take any music to listen to. No podcasts, none of that. It's all information. It's not allowing your subconscious to tick away. Um, the only thing I would say is if you have like any kind of form of ADHD or attention, issues, maybe you want some sort of like a white noise kind of thing to just take care of your conscious mind, just to kind of allow that to focus on something. That's the only thing I'd say. But basically, like if you're normally fine with that kind of thing and you don't need background noise, then try it. It's sometimes worth trying first and then see if that one works. And then if you're struggling, try and find something. I've used it in the past where I use music that is foreign language. Um, Good time for my dad to call me right now. A music that's foreign language, some music with no sort of singing or anything like that. That can be quite useful. And okay, so we've put ourselves in this state. So maybe I've gone for a walk down by the river, take myself off for like an hour or so. Now, the first thing is you've got to try and do this a couple of times. So try and build it into your schedule. It's important to not rush these things because rushing is a form of survival. It's like saying, I need to be quick to survive. And therefore, it brings in the fight or flight thing. It's like tenses you up, breathing gets shallower, all that kind of thing. Might be really subtle, but trust me, it's not a good way of relaxing. So we need to be in a relaxed state because creativity and free thinking comes from a relaxed state. That's a good way. So just go for some walks and just see, just like give yourself before you go a little bit of a thing like what do I really want to do? But then try not to think about it. Just look at stuff because you give your conscious mind this question about, you start thinking about it maybe after this and you go for a walk and you might not, nothing of the sort's going to come to your head about what you want to do or where you want to go. You might feel totally lost. You might think about totally different things. That's fine because you kind of have to let that happen for a bit as it gradually goes down into your subconscious. And then that's like when you wake up in the night and you've got the solution for a problem, or first thing in the morning, or in the shower, or anything like that. It's because your conscious mind is taken over by something else. And then your subconscious goes, here's the solution. I've worked on it for you. There's a really good bit of fact that I can't fully remember, but it's something like your conscious mind has got like the power of like a Sega Mega Drive, like a 16-bit computer, and your subconscious is more powerful, 10 times more powerful than the most powerful computer in the world, or something ridiculous. So it's a huge difference between the two, which is why when you try and actively think about something to solve it, it generally doesn't work because it needs to happen in the main part of your brain rather than this tiny little bit of your brain that's like for kind of hitting rocks against things and stuff. That's probably a massive oversimplification of how the brain works, but it helps me understand it. So we've got that thing in place. Now, if you want to go a step further and really help yourself and you have the time, there's this journaling thing you can do in the morning. It's in The Artist's Way, is the book that talks about it in a different way called Morning Pages. And this thing is free writing for 3 pages, 3 A4 sides, and you can do it smaller if you want. You can do less. 3 pages is kind of important because there's something that happens when you start to get into the third page. But basically, the idea is it shouldn't take you more than half an hour, really. You're not meant to be able to read the writing necessarily, so don't worry if your handwriting's terrible. But you just sit down, you wake up, and the first thing you do, like when you like been to the toilet, had a drink of water, whatever, sit down with a notepad and just write. But don't think about what you're writing. Just write as soon as it comes in. So as soon as you think about it, just write it down. And this again isn't trying to get you to necessarily solve a problem about what dream job, what thing you want to do, or anything like that. It's to just get your brain whirring. What it will normally do is it will anything that's on your mind that you maybe haven't even realized yet. Sometimes you wake up, you're a bit tense, you don't know why, you're just grumpy or something. It gets it out on the page and it comes out quicker, and then it frees you up for the rest of the day. Now, I'd say you've got to do at least a week's worth of this kind of morning pages if you're going to do it, because that will help you see the benefits. You do just have to kind of try and commit if you can, but give it a go. If you want to read more about it, it's The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. That's a good book. So I've talked a little bit about finding what you really are passionate about, maybe what the dream job is, just to check what the dream is, the project, the film, whatever it is you want to do. And we're going to do some potentially some free writing, but definitely some taking yourself off and letting your brain just kind of sit in quiet, making sure you have a sensory, like I say, sensory underload sort of time period where you are basically in sensory deprivation as best you can. I mean, you're not. There's loads of other stuff going on, but it's much less technologically based. So we want it nice and quiet and give your brain time to think. For a lot of people, this is going to be really uncomfortable. And if you are uncomfortable or you are trying to check your phone or you feel nervous about leaving your phone, that is a sign that you need to try and practice it because that's not going to help you with animation or getting any projects done because you're going to struggle to kind of be able to do it. So it's good to try and practice it. Break it down into smaller amounts if you struggle. But a walk is good because there's stuff to look at. Hello, people who are saying hello. And so, what are we talking about next? Okay, so we've done the walking. We've started to clear our brain out a little bit. We've got a little bit of space to think about what it is we really want, to just check what it is we really want, and we're withdrawing from the noise as best we can. If you feel urges to go and do something, to look at your phone, this is more about when we're doing the notes in a second. Try to resist, like if you feel automatic, because you're going to be a little bit more conscious of your state. So if your phone's to the side of you and you keep trying to pick it up, go and put it in another room and shut the door. That is normally enough for the conscious mind to just let you get on with what you need because it's just too much of an effort. Like you're in the room and that's it. That's why people go on these retreats where they like unplug well, there's no internet. They take an old typewriter. It's to remove that temptation. So people have been doing that for a long time. We need a little notebook. Now, I have personally, that's my passport. So I don't have one here, but I have like a tiny little like A7 style notebook, which is a soft cover that I can put in my pocket, and I can have a pen and something like this, and just something that's not going to leak in your pocket. It sounds a bit obvious, but like pens do leak, and you don't want that happening because it's guarantee you're going to take that pen out and you're not going to do the notes anymore. So something that's dead easy to write with, comfortable. It's not too cumbersome. The same with the notepad. Something you just make quick notes. It's not You're not going to be too precious about that notepad, and you can just get on with it. And this thing is to capture when ideas do come to you. So you might find with the free writing, you have a few things that uh, come into your mind that you're like, "Do you know what, they're good." Those you can take. Now, put those notes in. Don't feel like, am I doing too many notes? Am I not doing enough? There's no right or wrong way to do this. The main thing is to get your brain starting to think in a certain way. Then like I said, the free writing, you shouldn't really read it back. I wouldn't advise doing that. But at the time, if you write something, then action those things, like write them in the little notebook. It's important, by the way, that the free writing is totally private to you. Nobody reads it, and it has to be respected because otherwise you will filter yourself. The same for this notebook. You don't really want people reading it, and don't try and share it with people. I would say this is a bit of an endemic in our society. People have like a propensity to share everything. They want validation through it. It's the equivalent of running up to your mum or dad or whatever when you're a kid and saying, "Come look at me do this thing as I jump into the pool," or whatever. That's something I would try and avoid because you might end up changing what you actually want um, because of that. So yeah. So notebook, making some notes, and give yourself a couple of weeks to do this. You can keep this notebook as you're doing your little walks, or you're giving yourself the space. You don't have to do anything active. You can Walking's good because it's like a motion that just keeps you busy. If anybody cycles, it's actually a good time to think as well. And you can't really have music on when you cycle most of the time. Exercise in general is really good for sorting out stuff, getting your brain going. Sleep on it. If you have any ideas and you think, "Do you know what, this is exactly what I want to do. I'm going to be a motorcycle stuntman now, so this is what I want." Um, Sleep on it and just give yourself time to kind of go, "Do you know what? I'll see how I think about that tomorrow." The best ideas will stick with you. the best things. If you're motivated, you'll feel a gut feeling about being motivated. And hopefully, over a couple of weeks, maybe a month or something like that, you'll get a really clear idea of what you want to do. Now, you might be in a place where you already know this, so you can do this on like a light version where you can just check, take yourself off for a day, maybe a weekend, really sort of low sensory kind of thing, and just get out in nature and just have a think about it. And if you feel like, "Do you know what, I really want this, like I really want to be making short films. How am I going to do this? I know I really want it. That's cool. We're in a good place. But if not, then maybe try a few of those techniques. They, like I say, they're not. I can't say they're perfect. They're the only way. They're the best way. They're just the ways that I've learned over time to get stuff done. So how do you do it? How, when you know where you want to go from A to B, how do you actually do that thing? Because that's maybe where you're at right now. You've come onto this to listen, and you're like, okay, Adam, stop stringing me along. Tell me the answer. How do I get there? How do I get the job? How do I get, you need to break it down. I know that's really, really obvious, but sometimes the best advice is just straight in front of you. You need to break this thing down. And I mean, like, really break it down. So, say you want a job in animation and you're currently at the stage of uh, doing, I don't know, drawings of characters that you like. Yeah, you don't know how to animate, but you can draw, I don't know, Disney characters, amazing. So you've got good understanding of construction basics. You want to be a hand drawn animator. Do you want to be a hand drawn animator? Have that come up through the notes? Would you like to do character stuff? Is there something there that makes you want to be a hand drawn 2D animator? Is it just because you thought it was cool when you were a kid? And actually, being an animator would be just fun anyway. And maybe you don't want to spend so long drawing. Do you have any research on that kind of thing? So, thinking around that, again, really important to do this thinking without sort of the social media, high sensory inputs, things pinging and going. If you've got kids, I'm sorry, it's going to be much harder. And if you work in an environment where you've got lots of stuff going on, but it's, you need to carve out some sort of time if you can. And I'm talking like 10 minutes. It can be part of a commute where you put headphones on. That is when you could maybe use some sort of white noise to help blanket things out, or just some music. I often find, actually, I remember reading about this as well. If you have the same thing that goes on, like you listen to the same music, so the same kind of like classical music, the same kind of, um, I don't know, whatever else it's going to be, that actually helps because it stops your brain processing the new thing, and it allows you to just think about what you want to think about. So breaking it down. So yeah, we're trying to get into animation. So the first thing I would say, well, you need to learn to animate. Okay, so how am I going to learn to animate? Well, is it 2D hand drawn or is it cutout? Well, if it's cutout, then you find a course. If it's 2D, you need to find a course. How long does it take? Do some research. So from these things, you're going to get questions, maybe a spider diagram, making sure you've got a big notebook as well, so you can write some bigger notes down. Try and stay off the computer for a lot of this. If you're going to do some research, go on with like a list of, this is what I need to discover, even like question and then A for answer, and write that thing down. It will stop you, creeping into like chats and things and everything else, because some of your research will be on social media, and then you'll get distracted and you'll forget what you came on there to do. Happens all the time. And so it's important, maybe even set yourself a little, like, try the Pomodoro technique, 25 minutes, 5 minutes, well, 2 minute break or something like that. Basically, every half an hour, you get up, walk around, set yourself little chunks so you can get on with the thing that you've got to do in that amount of time. Then when the buzzer goes off, if you've not done it, you procrastinated, well done. And then you try again. Yeah. So try and break stuff down. That's okay. If it's basically for getting a job in the studio, you need to find out, what are you going to actually have to achieve in order to get that job in the studio. So I'm going to give you the animation example again. So maybe now you've gone away, you've learnt how to, we started to learn 2D animation, um, but then you look at like, what, I don't know, you find 10 different studios who've hired for 2D animation. You get some research from uh, Screen Skills, the UK body, and it tells you a little bit there. And then you speak to some studios, you ask for advice from animators and people like me, and we give you information. And you go, okay, I need a show reel. I need to show what I can do, and I've not worked on any projects, and nobody will hire me. how do I solve this solution? Now, if you're really stuck at any point, you do the same thing again. You give yourself the problem, you go off, low sensory input, do your little walks or whatever. This is nothing new. All the writers of the 15th, 16th, 17th century artists and everybody else, they all used to do exactly this. If you read any art history book about their process, so it's not something new. It's just having the discipline to do it. And I say discipline, it's not really discipline. It's just like treating yourself like a little puppy dog sort of thing. You have to kind of reward yourself at the end of it, so that you give yourself a treat for doing it, and until it becomes a habit. I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a second. But knowing how to get there is half the battle, and then the next bit is you just taking the step out the door. It's like when you're trying to get to, I don't know, going for runs in the morning. If you get your clothes out for the run, trainers and stuff, and put them in an easily accessible place, you are like, it's something like two-thirds more likely to do it because it's basically there. If you had to do that in order to be able to go to, if you went for a run, you got an amazing like full English breakfast or whatever you want, like bagel and coffee after it for free. I guarantee you, you'd probably run every morning. I would. I'd run without, like with a bad knee, that kind of thing, because the reward is high. So you need to find a way of rewarding yourself. Again, we're going to talk about that more in a second. So we're breaking things down. We've, like, for example, you've learned how to animate. You're now at a point where you're like, I'm building up a show reel. Then you break each of those tasks down as well. So you research and then kind of like do your little kind of little walks, sensory deprivation, kind of thinking time, and gradually building up that muscle of kind of concentration, because it takes time to build up the concentration in different areas, and break them down. So when I was first trying to get a job in 2D animation, I had no studio experience. I looked at other people's 2D animation reels and then I was like, oh, that's really cool. I wish I worked on a project like that. I want to work on projects like this. They didn't exist, or I couldn't get a job in it. So I kind of created a dummy project where I would make an animated clip. I'd make a short sequence of storyboards, come up with a rough idea, and then I'd animate it and put it in my showreel. And they'd ask me when I sent my showreel in, "Oh yeah, cool. You use this software and you did the animation. There. What project was it for?" I said, "I just did it myself." And normally that's kind of like a, I say, because this is the kind of thing I wanted to work on, and I want to show people like you that I can do it. If you do that, you're normally going to get like big props. If anybody's like, "Ah, but it's not a real project. I'm not interested in you." That's rare. I don't think anybody's really going to be that much of an idiot. I think they'll be impressed that you took the initiative, and also if the animation's good, they're not bothered if it's like a paid project or if you've done it off your own back. It's harder to do it off your own back anyway. So that's a way of kind of building those things, and then you start to go, well, there's my showreel. I've made the thing, and then you go through the process again, breaking it down. Now, you need to be kind to yourself with time frames and things. Give yourself a time frame, give yourself little deadlines and aims and things, but allow them to be adjustable. Things happen, life happens. If you are young, younger than me, then you are going to have to get used to the fact that things happen. Maybe they've already happened for you, but stuff will happen, and you'll be like, oh, you feel like hard done to. But that's gets more and more the case as you get older, and you just have to down tools at points and shelve things or postpone them, move things around. Um, Such as life. But it's fine. So you need to be adaptable, and not make it the be all and end all. And that's also goes into the thing of enjoying the journey and not just the goal, because it's part of it. Like it kind of becomes a story in its own right. Like, oh, I was going to do this, but then my granddad wanted to go skydiving, so I obviously had to go because he's 95 and that kind of thing. So you have to be able to roll with it a little bit, and then it becomes fun. The story of the creation is actually a story on its own that you can tell people, and it's cool. And maybe in 10 years you'll be sitting doing one of these things, telling people how you got into the studio system. So okay, times, deadlines, being realistic and kind to yourself. If you're into like affirmations and things, like where you just write a couple of things that you're grateful for, I really personally struggle with this, maybe because I'm just mean to myself, but I struggle to sit down and kind of do that sort of thing. It feels a bit false to me. I don't connect with it, so it might not work for you. But if it does, it's worth reminding yourself of the things that you are grateful for, but also happy that you have achieved so far. It's easy to beat yourself up. And when you start beating yourself up, I personally notice this, like mental health wise. If I am starting to see more negative thoughts creep in, I'm starting to be a bit more negative about my work, I'm starting to be a bit more kind of like glass half empty about things. That normally is a sign of an early burnout or working too hard or not. I need a break, basically. I need a break, like throw the computer out the window, well, just leave. But try and take a full sensory period off. I keep saying sensory because when I say a weekend off, some people go on a weekend off and then they go on Twitter and that kind of that's not time off, guys. You need to actually shut off, like cut ties with the world a little bit. I went on a holiday to Greece. I've never been to Greece before. I went for like 6 days, and I was like so against it. I was like a little whiny child. I was like, "Oh no, we could just go somewhere in Britain," kind of thing. And then I got to a point where I was like at my wit's end, and then just made an impulsive decision. Let's just try and do a last minute holiday. Um, and when we went there, I realized, oh my word, I needed this like crazy amounts. Danny says, I feel attacked. I'm talking about you, Danny. Everybody else, but I've heard your podcast. Go and listen to the Retakes podcast, by the way. It's really good. So, yeah, it's you really do need to just trust your instinct with that kind of thing. When you feel these things, go for it. If you don't know what those triggers are yet, when the event happens, something happens where you feel like burnt out, I'm bored, I've been moaning too much, my partner's like saying shut up, that kind of thing, then you need to backtrack a little bit and then look for those triggers and say, what is it that makes me get to that point? Like they always say that like a mistake is only a mistake if you don't learn from it. And I really think that in terms of self development, personal development, um, it's not about chasing some sort of goal. It's just trying to, for me, trying to become a slightly better version of myself in terms of how I am to other people, treating people nicely, being able to enjoy moments, be more present, those kind of things. It's not just about like money and societal status and that kind of stuff. That's a little bit more like vacuous. So we, yeah, try and find the thing that is which the ikigai thing will help you with, and then try and be nice to yourself and know those triggers if you're pushing yourself too hard and how to adjust that schedule. And if you need to move a deadline here or there, and if you miss a deadline, do a little debrief with yourself and go, why did I miss this thing? Was I distracted or did a lot of stuff happen? You know what I mean? So many people beat themselves up at the start of the pandemic. Well, when the pandemic started, loads of people said, "I'm gonna do loads of work," and then they didn't, and then they beat themselves up about it. But I feel like everybody did that. I don't think there was many people who were, like, super productive and just managed to turn a blind eye to the whole of the human race being possibly on its knees. So it's that kind of stuff that, you need to be kind to yourself with. Kevin's saying my resets are traveling alone. It really helps and gives you space. Yeah, I love it too. And people think I'm weird when I say stuff like that, but I kind of like traveling alone, especially through airports and stuff like that. There's I don't know, there's something about it that's really nice. Just trains as well, like leaning, looking out the window with no sort of headphones in or anything, just listening to kind of the rumble of the tracks and stuff. Um, there's some really nerdy like train stuff online if you're that way inclined, but I think in later life I'm going to be madly into trains. I'm sure about it. But yeah, it is very soothing. It's amazing. Um, okay, so where we're at to, where we're up to. So talking about deadlines being kind and so on, it may take a while. So I'm going to throw another quote at you. This is the one about, I might be misquoting here, but you get the gist of it. It's basically that people always overestimate what they can achieve in a day, a week, and always underestimate what they can do in a year. And I would say that's really, really important for this kind of task. Make sure that you give yourself plenty of time. If you do it faster, you'll just be like, you'll be giddy, because you'll be like, look how quick I am. I've finished this thing in record time. But if you do it slow, you'll hate yourself or you'll feel like you're failing. And if you feel like you're failing, you're less inclined to carry the project through. So give yourself plenty of time. Yeah. That doesn't mean give yourself plenty of time like, I'm going to do it in 10 years. No, that's just going to allow for you to procrastinate and put it off and put it off. Give yourself like a plan and then work it out from there. Now, How do we know how much time it's going to take? Well, you need to be realistic. Again, we need to get into that state where we don't have too much sensory input and we can think about stuff. Now, this one is important to probably do while you're sitting down. This one's not a walking sort of thing. But I need you to kind of go through an average sort of month. I say month, not a week, because some weeks you'll have stuff, you'll have no free time. Other times you'll have a little bit. Parents are maybe going to have a lot less free time. If you're in your 20s, you might have a lot more free time if you don't have kids or whatever. Um, and depending on your commitments, you might have caring commitments and things like that. But you need to find, even if you've only got 2 hours a month, right? Now, even the busiest person has 2 hours a month because there's choices of things that you have. Um, to do. Like the fact that if you're watching this, you're on YouTube watching me talk. You've got spare time. You know what I mean? Like just you have a little bit of flexibility. So it's about carving that out. Now, 2 hours over a month, over a year, you're easily going to get like 24 hours in there. But that's a whole day working on something. Well, if you were to do a short film in a day thing, you'd have a short film. It'd be a microfilm, but you still would have done it. And it's something you wouldn't have done otherwise. So it is doable. And that's 2 hours, like you've got more time. So we would basically need to establish over a month where you'll have a couple of chunks. Now, I like to call these little time blocks, and these blocks are really important to share with people who share your life, so that they can understand not to interrupt. It's like I work from home most of the time, and it's very difficult to try and explain to my dog that he's best not to interrupt me for if he could just give me 1 hour. Like, could you please sleep and not bring me toys to play with? He's nearly 3 and he's still like a puppy in his head. My wife Josie, she's sometimes, if she's excited by an idea, she'll come in the door, and I do shut the door like this when I'm working, but it's difficult, if we get somebody buzzes downstairs, that kind of thing. There's like washing needs to be taken out, all those kind of things. The tiny distractions. I heard somewhere that if somebody breaks your state of flow, like when you're in the zone, it generally takes an average of 20 plus minutes, about 20 or 21 minutes to get back into that same state. That's a lot. You know what I mean? Like if you've been working 20 minutes, somebody breaks it, you've lost a third of your time. So to try and be, like earmark that time is really important when you are going to do things. Uh, so we need to find those little chunks of time. Now, you can put a sign on your door, you can do whatever. They don't have to be big amounts of time. I would say 45 minutes generally is a little block, is probably the maximum you're going to hit. Half an hour is probably a sweet spot with a little break or walk around, attends to your distractions in that time. And then you can double them up so you can make them into a 2 hour block if you've got the luxury of that. But I would say it's more about consistency than like huge bursts of, I'm going to do a whole day on this. That's quite hard to do in our society. We're not used to concentrating for that amount of time. So find what works for you, but you need to find those blocks of time. Then you can then put the things that you need to do into those blocks and work out how long it's going to take you. If you're like, wow, it's going to take me 2.5 years to do this thing, maybe you need to find a bit more time, or you need to just accept and just start on that road. It's a really common thing that people go, it's just, it's going to take me too long. It's too late for me, kind of thing. Well, I can tell you when it is going to be too late is if you don't do it. If you don't do it, you'll never get there. So if you try, at least you're on, you're putting one foot at the base of the mountain, so to speak. I know it's difficult. Like I'm saying this like I'm perfect at it. I'm definitely not. It's always easier to give the advice, but it's I know it works, and that's the thing that gets me going, gets me up in the morning, gets me starting on a project, kind of thing. Is that first step because I know I'll feel good after it. And take time when you've done something. This is one of my next points. When you hit a small goal, take time to like celebrate that. Take some micro time off. Take some time to go and I don't know, go and have some food somewhere, or just get out and about, a little picnic. Even go and having your coffee outside, leaning against the wall in the sunshine or the rain, and just appreciating the fact that you've done something nobody else has done exactly the same way as you. And this is your life right now, and you'll look back on this point and maybe remember this. That's really, it's kind of pivotal. It sounds really like woo woo and kind of hippie, but you got to appreciate those moments and be able to stop and appreciate it because that will help you enjoy the journey, the process, and therefore the goal becomes just another step on the process. So we've got that. We've got all that going on. I've never had so many calls on my phone in the space of an hour. My phone just keeps going off. Don't know what's going on. Maybe it's Disney lawyers ringing me after that one Disney comment. But anyway, I'm going to carry on. So blocking in chunks of time. I was going to say about making this is a new thing that I've tried a few times. It works pretty good. Maybe it'll work really well for you. Making what have I written here? There we go. Rescue. A positivity rescue pack. So sometimes when you're really struggling to get yourself motivated, that initial spark of motivation was maybe from a film you saw, or you come out of something and you're buzzing, or you've seen something, you've read something. Try and make a little folder on your computer, or even print some stuff off, or make a little scrapbook, or just with it can be links. If it's obviously digital, it can be links to things, little films and things to watch, but don't make it too long. Don't get lost in the procrastination of like feeling like you're doing something. But I'm just talking about little sparks to reignite that. Oh yeah, I remember why I started this. This is where I was at. Like, I've got some really embarrassing videos of me talking, and also just audio clips of me when I'm driving, talking about things really enthused, because it's like that's the point where I was like, right, I want to do this. And then if I listen to that again, it kind of gets me sort of G'd up again, and I'm back there because I can remember it. Okay, so maybe a little positivity rescue pack is a thing that you could create for yourself. It doesn't have to be extensive. It can be like 2 images. Um, I would say an audio note is really, really easy. Pop that on your phone, and just do it like be a nerd, like get stuck into it, like really. If you're hyped up, like let out a bit of a woohoo, and let yourself know, because it's only for you, and put on the music that you like, that makes you fired up and that kind of thing, because you're going to have points where you're going to be like, oh, why am I doing this thing? It's taking ages. Give yourself some motivation in there, and a little rescue pack is maybe worth trying. So we've talked about breaking it all down, fitting it to your schedule. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about was just maybe sharing it with a few people. Now, we're talking about people who are supportive and non-judgmental, especially in the early stages. Okay. I would never recommend sharing this stuff on social media. You can do that at a certain point, but to increase your accountability, say I'm doing this thing, but be careful with that, because that can weigh heavy on your shoulders. So that's why at the start, maybe you tell like one or two people, this is what I plan to do. They don't have to be in animation. In fact, I think it helps if they're not in animation, because they'll go, "Oh, that's so cool! You're making stuff move. How do you do that?" And then they'll kind of give you that energy that you need from your audio notes, and you won't have to put the song on and dance around again, because this person will maybe ask you how your project's going. So that is something maybe to do, and then you can increase your accountability if you're lucky enough to have a group of people who you can chat to about this kind of thing. That's cool. Go for that, but please try and avoid like this thing of like posting images and then looking at how many likes you get, because that can really, really sink you very quickly. And yeah, celebrating the little wins. I've already talked about that, so that's cool. Yeah, the motivation needs to come from within. Okay, so it needs to be something that you really want to do, that you can remind yourself where the drive comes from, which is going to come from you removing those kind of normal sensory things of our everyday life nowadays, off social media for a bit, that kind of stuff, and just having a real think, and really checking that the goal that you're aiming for is the thing that you really want to do, whether it's a short film, a script, whatever. Now, this plan doesn't have to stop just here. It can stretch further. Before I go on about that, I've got 10 minutes left. So if anybody has any specific questions from what I've said, if you want to write it in the chat now, and I can answer it. Otherwise, I'll just carry on. But like I said, this can stretch on a little bit longer. So you might have this as an initial goal to build a showreel to get a job in animation. But you might say, do you know what? I want to make a feature film of my own. Now that's not a ridiculous goal. Anything can be done. So you maybe then go, all right, I'm just going to rough out how am I going to get to that point? Well, I'm going to get some experience in animation. Then I'm going to make some connections probably. I need to find somebody who knows, maybe who's somebody who's made a feature film, who knows how to get that kind of thing done. I need some advice. Maybe you end up working at somewhere like Cartoon Saloon. Maybe you see Tom Moore. Maybe he says, "Hey, I'll give you 10 minutes of my time to talk about some stuff." Maybe you find some recordings of him talking about it online. That kind of thing, reading art of books, making of books, that all goes into it. And we talked about that. Don't underestimate the time it takes over a year. Well, if we're talking 5 years, think how much stuff you can do in 5 years. Think how much stuff you can do in 10 years, and so on. So that's it's not ever so exciting because it's not like flitting from one thing to another, but it is exciting the compound sort of interest, so to speak, of compounding your skills and compounding what you're working on. And I see it like as I'm getting older now, I see it from over the past decade and a half, 2 decades of people who I've known who were like, oh, I want to be a character designer. And then they get to here and they get to here and they keep going on and on and on. Same with animators and stuff who are doing really cool things, directors, and I'm just like, wow, this is really amazing to watch. So that's my little tips on that. Now I am going to turn this thing. Obviously, it's just going to become a thing on YouTube, and you can watch it again. But I'm going to turn it into an ebook that's going to be downloadable. I'm probably going to do some print versions just for people who like to have a print version. Also, I talk a lot about getting off the internet, so I don't really want people just looking at PDFs all the time if they want to spend a fiver and get an actual book. But yeah, I'm going to basically put the points out there and make it all nice visually. Now, Danny's asked, "What's my dream?" My dream is, well, to be honest, it's interesting because I've had it several times change. It was to work in animation on animated TV and films. One of my first jobs in animation was on a hand drawn feature film. It just took ages. I mean, I enjoyed the experience, but I was like, do you know what? This I don't think this is for me. Like it takes too long, and I don't really enjoy drawing that long. I like stuff to be quicker. So then I started thinking about I really like animating, but maybe story a bit more. And then I started doing TV animation cutout style, and it was really quick. And I was in a small studio, and it was faster. And I was like, oh, this is more like it. I get a choice. I can. The story structure is kind of there, but I actually have an influence, and I can develop these new characters and give them personalities. So I really enjoyed that. Then I was working in TV animation for a fair while, and start to get a little bit disillusioned with it. Preschool stuff for me sometimes can be a little bit like it's hit and miss. I've got to be really into the project. Like I've got to love the style of it. Otherwise, I'm a little bit like and there's loads of it now. It's not like it used to be. There's so much in animation in the past 10 years. It's just gone crazy. So yeah. So then, but I've always liked teaching people, and there's a big reward thing about seeing somebody's enthusiasm as they learn something and you give them your skills and then it unlocks something for them, but they all have their own individual ideas and dreams, and you just see it go across their face and you're like, this is cool. It's kind of the easy route in a way. Like I'm not gonna lie, I'm just it's easier for me to give somebody some skill sets to allow them to go on, and then me just sit back and be like, wow, what they're doing is amazing. It's what they talk about in the artist way as a shadow artist, somebody who like you hide behind somebody else like a shadow. Avoid doing your own thing because that's difficult. So, but I am coming back more to the making my own stuff. So I'm starting to do that more, and so now the dream has slightly changed. And I've always, like a lot of people, actually, on the competition I'm running at the moment on Instagram and Facebook about winning a Toon Boom license for a year, asking people what their dream is, and so many people say making their own TV series. Not many say feature films actually, but TV series. I guess it's like the Netflix era. It's the same for me. I would love to develop my own sort of characters, stories, world content, and really run with it. That could for me be. I could really like feature films. To be honest, I'd love to get into that sort of thing. And I'm not like totally set on just animation. I think personally Animation blends really nicely with live action as well. I'd love to make theater and animation combined. I've seen a few things like that. My wife Josie has worked in theater for a while, and she opened my eyes to stuff that was I was like, wow, this is so cool, and it is amazing. Animation, theater, they're very similar in a lot of ways. Um, and just to keep interested, to be enthused, to not get jaded. Like if you get like, oh, it just becomes too much of a job, then I start to go, I need a like a creative kick up the bum, so to speak, to kind of fire myself back up. So I've got a few. I just need to kind of get my head down and pick one and keep going. At the moment, I'm still working on a short film, so I am actually making some progress. I have a comic that's like massive undertaking. I just bit off more than I can chew. So I'm going to try and release that in little sections. Pretty out of my depth for that. I mean, I started with comics when I was like 10 years old, and I used to make comics, and that's what got me into animation. But it's been a long time since I was 10, so I'm not, and I don't have the lack of fear that I'd had when I was 10. So I'm being a little bit perfectiony with that. So I need a little bit of a jump on it. But yes, at the moment, short films. I do like storytelling. I like animation. I love animation. So that's the thing for me right now. Kevin, just saying about working on a solo animated short to remind myself why I love what I do, but the challenge is to not use Toon Boom already. Is to not use Toon Boom already got 2 minutes in, which I'm proud of. Yeah, well done, Kevin. That's amazing. And yeah, you don't have to use your professional uh, tools all the time. I actually think it's quite nice to not do that. It's like using a limited color palette in a way. When you paint it, it actually makes you more creative with limited tools. So I really like to get note cards and draw the ideas for stories on those, because that actually really helps me just free up, not having loads of buttons and things I can press and click. So that's a good one. But yeah, well done. And I know there's a lot of people here who are doing their own thing in their own way, and you all should be kind of like, no, after this, take a little moment and just say, look how much stuff I've done. Like, if 5-year-old version of you had met you now and you told them the stuff you'd done, even though you'll be a little bit like maybe cynical about things because, oh, I'm not telling them about that idiot boss or that one who's doing my editing or that project actually wasn't as cool. Doesn't matter. 5-year-old version of yourself would have seen that thing on TV or just the drawings that you've done or whatever you've done so far, even just your ambition and energy, and just look at you as a human and be like, wow, this person's so cool. I want to be. That's what you got inspired by when you were little, and so you have to remind yourself of that sometimes because it's very it's very easy to forget. I think if I had looked at myself, 10-year-old version of me doing those comics had seen this little studio set up and seen me create stuff, they would have been like, "That's cool. That's very cool." So yeah, remind yourself you kind of like on the pathway. 5-year-old version of me would freak out. Well, maybe as well. I think mine would be like, "I'm so old," kind of thing. Because like when you're 5, you think 30s like ancient and that kind of stuff as well. Okay, so thank you everybody for tuning in. It's been great. Chat's been really useful, and yeah, I want to thank everybody for joining in over this summer series. I don't know if I'm going to do any more live streams. I'll probably just wait for like the ideas to come. If anybody's got any topic suggestions or things you want to cover, that would be great. Just let me know and send me an email or put it in the comments or something like that. And yeah, thanks for joining me. It's been great. And now I'm going to get out of this hot room because it's not quite as warm as it was, but it's definitely heating up. And I shall speak to you or maybe see you all at some stage in person or online. So go and have a good rest of the week. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Bye.